This is the Brett Snodgrass Podcast. Thank you guys for joining me today. Go over to YouTube and subscribe to the Brett Snodgrass channel. Leave a comment. I'm going to get back to you as soon as I can. I love leaving comments. Let me know what you guys think. I want to know. I want some feedback. I want some conversations. Would love to know what you guys think about the show. I have a very, very special guest on today's show, Jeff Hoffman. Jeff Hoffman is a billionaire. He has been part of some of the startup companies like Priceline.com, Booking.com. He invented and created his very first company, which is the ticket kiosks at the airports, which he sold for about $100 million in his 20s. He has famous relationships that he's helped, like people like Michael Jordan, Evander Holyfield, some very famous athletes. He's a best-selling author. He's a speaker. He created a Grammy Award-winning jazz album. He's the executive producer of an Emmy Award-winning television show. He has done it all, and he is still going. But what I love about Jeff is he gives back. He uses his success as a platform to help improve other people's lives. He has a charity that we're going to talk about on the show today where he helps underprivileged kids all over the world. Man, it is my honor and privilege now to introduce you to Jeff Hoffman. What's going on, Jeff?
How are you today, man? Happy to be here.
Yeah, man, I'm super excited. Been pumped about this interview for a long time, and you just inspire me. I heard you the very first time at a mastermind, Collected Genius, and you had so many stories. I want to share a couple of them today, but just so many inspirational stories working with high profile people in the coaching, and you've also been a part of so many startups like Priceline.com, Ubid, creating the airport ticket kiosks. So I want to talk about some of those stories, but I always start off with this question, Jeff, and that is this: who is Jeff Hoffman?
Well, at the start, I'll go way back really fast here. Because I grew up in the Arizona desert with a single mom who had 4 kids. And I was industrious, meaning I was always walking down the street, knocking on doors, trying to find a way to make a buck, but not because I wanted things or money, Brett, but because my mom was already working multiple jobs. And so I was, the little man, I thought, right? I have to be the little man of the house because otherwise I had sisters and a little brother. And I was trying to find a way to make money to take pressure off my mom. So I always started with this understanding that if you go out in the hot sun and sweat and work, you can take care of people. And that formula of hard work and reward for it was something that I understood for a kid. It wound up being the only way I got to go to the college I wanted to go to because I had to pay for it myself by starting a little business. So I've always been industrious, but I've never been focused on money or things. I've been focused on a goal that just happened to take making money to achieve.
No, I love that. And I know that you have a charity that you're helping children, underprivileged children, and you love to mentor youth. I want to talk about that on this episode, but let's just take you back. You're in your 20s, and at your talk, you talk about there was a need for airport ticket kiosks, and you came up with this idea. There was a need for it, and in your 20s, you ended up selling that business for millions of dollars, right? So I think you went from literally creating this, grinding, probably broke, not having much money, to multi-millionaire. So I want to take us in that story real quick. And what was that like in your 20s to have that huge breakthrough?
So again, I was never focused on money or things. I was focused on freedom, which takes money, the ability, because when I got out of school after working that little company to pay for college, I then got an engineering job at a big engineering company to get a good paycheck, but I actually hated it. But every single day I hated going to work. And so when I quit and was standing in the airport that day and missed a flight because it took so long to check in, and I got an idea that I could fix this problem and started my first real company, which was those kiosks. The key note for anybody listening is go out in the world and solve a real problem that people actually have. And that was a real problem. The airport lines were long and you had to check in with a human to get a boarding pass and check in. And so when I went home and said, there has to be a better way to do this, and came up with the kiosk idea, and because it solved problems for airlines and for travelers, when you solve problems a lot of people have, you get paid. And so that's what wound up happening. It wasn't that many years building the company. By the way, at 20 something years old, I had no idea how to build a company. I was hiring 40-year-old people that kept saying, hey boss, what do you want us to do? And I was like, I have no idea what to do. That's why I hired you. And again, we were, the right time, the right place. We actually executed and delivered. And in the end, we sold the company. My goal wasn't to become a millionaire in my 20s, but that's what happened when we sold the business. And it changed everything. But I have to be honest, it changed it both good and bad. I had been driving a used Hyundai right up until that day of the sale. But what's interesting was I didn't really care. There was never a day that I felt sorry for myself and I was just more thrilled that I had a car that worked. I was a good, solid, reliable car. So I wasn't, unhappy before that. But then when we sold the company, what struck me I'm not pretending I didn't do something. I went out and bought a brand new top of the line Lexus for cash then. And I didn't hate that. I just didn't need that. But it changed the behavior. While it enabled me to have the freedom that I wanted, it changed a lot of people's behavior around me in negative ways that I never expected.
Can you dive in about like what was some of the change in behavior around you? So you go from this person to now this kind of status, power, money, prestige. What was some of the reactions? Maybe close family members, friends around you.
Well, I'll tell you two big ones. One was some cousins that I had never met, but they were technically related. I had to confirm that with my mom. But actually called me and said, "Will you buy us a car?" And I said, "Pardon me, who is this?" And they told me who they were, and they were related to my aunt, and they're in my family tree. I've never met them, never heard the names. Wow. And I was like, maybe I'm misunderstanding. They're like, "We need a car." And the word in the family is, "You have money now, so we just buy us a car." I was like, "I don't even know who you are." And they said, "Well, we're your family, we're relatives, so you should buy us a car." And I was like, "I've never even met you." And they said, "Are you going to do it or not? Are you going to buy us a car? Or are you just going to be a greedy asshole?" That was a quote. No. I said, "Wait, because I'm not buying a car from a relative I've never met. Now I'm a greedy asshole." And they said yes and hung up.
Wow.
So
wow.
I called my mom and said, "What is that
wow.
about?" And the other one quickly was during the time we were selling the company, I was deeply involved in this acquisition and I was gone a lot. When I got home, I went out to dinner with friends of mine, regular dinner group, and same people I'd been with all the time, where you sit over dinner and you lament your problems or your unpaid bills or whatever. And now all of a sudden, after dinner, at the end, I said, "Hey, I appreciate you guys putting up with my travel." I said, "Let me grab the check." And it was like all hell broke loose. People said, "We don't need you to pay for our dinner." And I was like, "Whoa, chill out. I'm not trying to insult you." And they're like, "Yeah, we get it. You're rich now. You can buy everybody's dinner." And I said, "I was just trying to do something nice." And they said, "Whatever." And people just were mad at me.
Wow.
And I'm like, what is this horrible crime I committed by just trying to pick up the check?
Yeah.
But it created a reaction that I never predicted.
Wow.
People just angry at me. So those are the kind of things that suddenly changed that I never saw coming.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. And just for a 20-something-year-old to start to deal with that, I'm sure that kind of blew your mind. And, one of the things is, with your companies, it seemed to revolve around, first was the ticket kiosks, and then you were part of Priceline.com, Booking.com, and other various travel industries. So I know you have kind of a reason why you went into the travel, and can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, you mean my personal reason for getting in travel?
Yeah, it seemed like a lot of your industries was revolved around travel. Hotels.
It was something that started for me when I was a kid, which was credit Mark Twain. Mark Twain had a famous quote inside a book that I picked in school to do my book report on. And the Mark Twain quote was the one where he said, "Travel is the fatal enemy of prejudice." And I remember asking my mom about that and then being up all night thinking about it. And the message I came away with was that, the only way you can really be evolved person, a good person, is if you take the time to get to know and understand people that don't look like you. And I was like, man, I got to get out of my city and go see the world. So that the opportunity to travel and go see the world was something I really wanted. It just was, my friends, when I told them that, would laugh. And they're like, dude, you need to go get a job. No one's going to pay you to fly around the world, and you're broke, your mom's broke. And so that was everybody's attitude, was it's never going to happen. But that was a goal that my, everybody has their own. But my sort of vision of an epic life would be, and I don't feel any less excited about that. I love traveling and going to new places and exploring.
Yeah.
And that's all I ever wanted to do. But it was never going to happen according to everybody. In fact, again, not judging anybody. Everybody does what works for them. But all the people I grew up with are sort of still in the same 5 square mile area they've lived their whole lives in, which, again, there's no right or wrong, but I just didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
I had big plans. So it's not coincidence that I wound up in the travel industry because, and especially for your listeners, kind of a pretty simple formula to leading your own epic life, which is you got to find a way to become valuable to the people that can create that epic opportunity for you. So if you want to travel, a real good idea would be to become valuable to the travel industry. So everybody wants you. If you want to be sitting, I told a young woman in fashion this not long ago. If you want, she said, my dream would be to be invited to sit along the runway at Fashion Week in New York. And I said, there's a way to do that. You got to be valuable enough to the people in the fashion industry that everybody wants you. And what makes you valuable to anybody in any industry is that you solve a problem they have that has value to them. So that was my formula. If I could solve problems in the travel industry, airlines around the world and people in travel would call me. And that's exactly what happened. We wound up back to the kiosks, getting a call, from like an airport in a different country every week saying, can you come to Germany? Can you come to Italy? People wanted us, they wanted to buy and install product that we built. And so creating those companies in that industry enabled me to sort of fulfill my childhood dream of seeing the world.
Yeah. That's amazing. And you talk a lot about focus. So in these companies, for example, Priceline, you really wanted to focus on one thing. You guys did different things, but there was one thing that you did really, really well. I believe you talked about putting butts in beds, right? And focusing on that one thing. And you did some cars, you did some airline tickets, things like that, but really focusing in on one thing. So dive in. How important is that in talk to the business leaders, the entrepreneurs out there of you might do a couple different things, but like honing in on that one thing, that 90% thing.
So along the way, I've done this my whole life. Whenever I've had a chance to be around successful people that I admire, I try to be a sponge and soak up all the knowledge I can and ask all the questions I can, right? During any opportunity that I have, or just listen well and take notes. And I noticed some common themes. The people whose companies hit this explosive growth, what they always used to call the hockey stick of growth. I noticed that those people did not achieve that. I'll give you an example in a minute. By trying to be all things to all people. They achieved that by being the best at something. And that's why I got this analogy. You got to win a gold medal at something. And I use that analogy, Brett, because, there's no Olympic gold medalist who won a gold medal in swimming, also in volleyball, and also in track and field. It doesn't happen, right? The reason it doesn't happen is because it's so hard to win a gold medal in anything that you just can't do it in swimming and in volleyball or whatever. So I sort of took that because I noticed business people doing that. I will give you the example. People forget that even though Bezos' idea was someday Amazon would be a marketplace of everything, for many years, he only sold books. And his theory, I spoke to him way back, when I was talking to him in the beginning, he said, we're just going to be the best darn bookseller on the planet. And when you win a gold medal in something, people say, wow, it's just a book, but I love doing business with them. Sell me something else.
Yeah.
And the early conversations I had years ago with Tony Hsieh at Zappos, Tony said, step one is to become the best darn shoe seller on the planet. So companies that focus on being the best darn something in the world, those are the ones that achieve rapid growth. They become known as experts and everybody wants to do business with them. Then you can start expanding your product line once you're already a gold medalist. So in a sense, That's really what Priceline.com and Booking.com did. I think it's like 93% of the company's multi-billion-dollar revenue is only one product: hotel rooms. There's a button you can click for airline or rental car, but that's like 2 or 3% of the business. The company won a gold medal in hotel rooms and sells hotel rooms in 190 countries now. So that's the advice to listeners. Find the thing you know in your heart is the one product you can really crush and be a gold medalist in, and stop trying to do everything else.
Oh, I love that. And speaking gold medalists, you talked in your talk about working with some of the best athletes. I mean, you were obviously work with the best business people in the world, but some of these best athletes like Evander Holyfield, you talked about Michael Jordan, you've already talked about Jeff Bezos, and you had some great stories about some of these high performers. Like I said, they did one thing really, really well, but can you take us into maybe a story? I remember you talked about Michael Jordan, a story about him, Evander Holyfield, but tell us a quick story about these high-performing athletes and why they were a champion.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because I've had multiple friends. I have friends that are either Super Bowl champs, or whatever, World Series champs, and just people, or even in business, right? Like, one friend of mine that was a singer and decided to start his own little band. His little band, Chris's little band, turned out to be NSYNC. And Chris is the guy that put it together and called Justin. And so in the same way, another buddy of mine, Ray Lewis, is a 2-time Super Bowl champ, 13-time Pro Bowler. And one of the days that really made me think about this was I was actually on the phone with Derek Jeter. And he's obviously a multi-time World Series winner. And Derek said to me jokingly, he said, "Hey," and I said, "What?" And he said, "Do you have to win some kind of title to be friends with you?" And I was offended by that. I said, "No." And I said, "Why would you say that?" And he said, "Because a lot of your friends, like even Holyfield, right, was a 4-time heavyweight champ, have won titles." And so that night I was sitting there thinking about it, and I realized, Brett, it isn't that at all. It's that I am attracted to a personality type, an attitude, a work ethic that the people that have those things wind up winning. It's not the other way around. I don't like them because they won. I like this personality type, and those people are probably going to win. And so that's what I started to notice, that there is an attitude. Do you want me to just share the Michael Jordan story? Because that was really representative of it.
Yeah, I have not shared it yet, so go for it.
Okay, so I'll try to make it quick, but I was helping him. He wanted to launch an internet company at one point, and I was working with him, and we were walking to lunch one day, and I had remembered watching a game at the end of late in his career. He was already Michael Jordan. He'd already won all those rings, the MVPs, all the money. He was already Michael Jordan. And in this game, it was late in the season. The playoffs were already set. That game was fourth quarter. They were already up by 21. So the game was won. The playoffs were set. He's already Michael Jordan. His teammate throws the ball over his head and it's going out of bounds. The other 9 players on the court take a look at the ball that's headed out of bounds up court and turn and start going the other direction. Jordan, without a moment's hesitation, plants his feet, turns, accelerates, stops right inside the inbounds line, goes in the air horizontal, grabs the ball, throws it to a teammate, and then smashes into the laptops on the press table. But he saved the ball from going out of bounds. So I'm walking with him that day, and I said, "Can I ask you something?" He said, "What?" And I said, "You're already Michael Jordan. Why on earth would you do that? I don't understand." And he said something that was really significant. Brett, he said, "You're right, you don't understand." He said, "I'm a Michael Jordan because I do that." He said, "Jeff, I made a decision from 6th grade to chase every loose ball like it was the last shot available in the NBA Finals." He said, "If you take that attitude to work every day, that's how you become Michael Jordan." And I was like, oh my God, that's just so cool. Because that is the attitude, the commitment, the work ethic that winners have. Winners don't look at the ball and say, we're already in the playoffs. It's going out of bounds. No one else is going for it. Michael said, "I just have chased every loose ball my entire life the same way, automatically, and that's how I got here." And so I really took that to heart. And so you can ask yourself, right, when you're not achieving goals or not where you want to be in life, The question is, do I really chase every loose ball, or do I let it go sometimes? Am I committed to the attitude and the work ethic that it takes to really be a winner? Because if you're not, you're never going to get to that level.
Yeah.
That's what's common about all those people.
Wow. That's amazing. I know you have so many more stories, and there's just amazing to meet Michael Jordan, meet Evander Holyfield, just to tell these stories. Thank you, Jeff, for sharing that. I have one quick personal question, though, too, because you talk a lot about focus. You talk about, if you're going to be a champion, focus on that one thing. But when I look at you, most of your career, you did go into the travel industry and did Priceline, startup companies, but you've also did these other things too, right? You mentioned InSync. You did a movie. You produced a jazz album, right? So you did these like interesting things that were totally outside of your realm, your niche, right? So can you talk about why you went into those certain areas?
Yeah. So here is the really, really important point. What I say about focus is to do one thing at a time, not one thing for the whole rest of your life. That's what people sometimes get confused, because I left the internet and started that music company. And then later we started a film company and made movies. Now we're making television and doing stuff in sports. The difference is when you are building something, it's one thing at a time. So when you're building a travel company and somebody comes in, if you'd come to talk to me about something, Brett, I would have said, if you're not here to talk to us about how to get butts in hotel beds, call me next year. Later, when I was doing music, if you'd called me, I would have said, if you're not here with tips on selling out Friday night's concert, call me next year. So the key isn't to do the same thing your whole life. It's to do one thing at a time. That's the part that people get wrong. They're running 4 different businesses. And I know what people tell them, multiple streams of income. That's fine for a lifestyle. But if you're trying to build something that goes big, Jeff Bezos didn't have 5 companies going when he launched Amazon. His goal wasn't, gee, I need multiple streams of income. His goal was, I'm going to build something big, right? And so same with Zuckerberg and Facebook. He wasn't running 4 companies. So that's the deal. When you build a company, even I learned this from Richard Branson. When he would launch, when he was doing Virgin Records, he was the CEO of a music company. And then he brought someone in to run it, right? Before he started an airline. And then he brought somebody in to run it. And then he moved on and he was running Virgin Mobile. In fact, I had a friend of mine that came in and ran that. Then they sold it. Then he started Virgin Galactic. So that's the key. Gotcha. You can do a lot of things, but if you want to win, do them one at a time and finish it before you sell the company, close the company, bring in someone to run it. But one thing at a time, that's the focus I'm talking about.
I love that. That's good. That's good. Good wisdom right there. Guys, take note of this. And I want to just kind of transition into, I was on your website. You've said this many times as well, but on your website, you said success isn't the destination. It's the platform that allows you to do the stuff that really matters. And you've taken that to heart because you had a story and you heard someone say your success can be someone else's miracle, right? So how have you taken your success? That's not your total destination, but now you're totally giving back. You have charities and you're totally diving into helping underprivileged children. So take us into that a little bit.
Sure. So it is, honestly, I had a brief moment. I remember my father calling me and he was a little worried. I said, what? And he said, you sort of made your first money when you were too young. And I said, well, isn't it the goal to do well in business? And he said, yeah, but I'm afraid you're going to be adrift and a little disillusioned because everybody's trying to get whatever, rich or famous or whatever. And if you get there kind of young, what's left to work for? And I remember sort of thinking about this, everybody's in the rat race and everybody's, again, trying to get rich, trying to get famous, whatever they're trying to do. And I made money early on and I did get a little disillusioned. At first you might go buy a bunch of stuff, but then you realize you never even wanted the stuff. You just wanted to know you could have it. Right? It suddenly loses its shine once you could just buy whatever car you want. The cars don't mean anything anymore or whatever it is. And so purpose gets a little harder. And you start to have to figure, it's like the Maslow's pyramid. Once one thing is filled, in this case, money or success, something else has to drive you. And I didn't really get that because everybody's always, like I said, in that rat race, trying to make money and trying to make more. And that's what everyone's pushing you to do. And then when that box was kind of checked, I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do next until the first time that I found out that the more money I make or the more business I did back then, the more people I could help. And it just came about because of a news story about a shelter for abused women that was being closed because they ran out of money. And the women were being sent back either to the abusers or to the streets. And I was sitting there thinking, man, somebody should do something. They should help those women. And I had my sort of life-changing epiphany then, because I sort of looked at myself and said, I hear myself saying like all this, they should help those women. And then I realized something, there is no they. If everyone's saying they should help those women, no one's helping anybody. And I was like, wait a minute, I can help those women. I never thought about that before. That money that I made is sitting in the bank. I don't really need that. I could go actually basically pay for that house for those women so they don't have to go back to abusers or to the streets. And that's where I made the connection that night, literally. And so that's what I did. I went and took care of all those women in the home and helped with their future and their security. And then I said, man, this is a good formula. Work hard, run a good business, make money, and then go use it to make other people's lives better. And then it gives you purpose that is not trying to make another buck. The focus is not trying to make money. The focus is trying to make other people's lives better. So that's what led to the creation of our charity, which is called World Youth Horizons, where we literally build schools, we build orphanages, we give kids everything from clothes to shoes to food to medical care around the world, kids that are abandoned and hopeless. And then we get them in school since education is their way out. So the work we do at our charity at World Youth has been my favorite job ever, is my nonprofit work.
That's amazing. We're going to put a link to that in our show notes too, guys, on our YouTube channel. So check that out. We got to help the organization, World Youth, and it's just amazing. So thank you so much for what you do, Jeff, and using your platform. That's amazing. So I got to have lunch with you at our mastermind group, and there's a question that sometimes burns in every entrepreneur's mind or every business leader's mind. As you talk about these world champions and people that focus, if they want to build something big, but then someone asks you the question about balance, and you said the words, well, balance is a myth. So, someone that's really driven, wanting to really go into business, want to do something big. Can you dive into that a little bit of that? Yeah.
Sure. So, the reason that I say that is because I think people somehow think they're going to get it all right, that there's some perfection goal out there. And the reason that I say balance is a myth, because people need to give themselves permission to be good enough. You don't have to get everything right all the time. You have to give yourself permission to make some mistakes, but then fix them, and to be the best you can be, which is not perfect. Mm-hmm. You're not the greatest anything, right? You don't have to be the world's perfect father, husband, brother, son, boss, CEO, whatever, but be the best you can be at all those things. Mm-hmm. And that's why I say that, because some people think there's some perfection, or in social media, they see someone else's life on social media that looks perfect, and it's not. It's the social media version of their life. So they hold themselves to a standard that makes no sense. So I think the key that for me, that took me a long time to learn, was that you've got to take the time to look at sort of all the aspects of your life. At your most significant relationship, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, whatever that is, your significant other. If you have that person in your life, you have to stop and say, how am I doing? Am I, and ask, what can I do better in this relationship? How am I doing? If you don't look at it, right, and you don't pay attention to it, and the same thing goes, stop every once in a while and say, what about my immediate family, right? When's the last time you talked to your mother, your father? How did that go? You had an argument with your sister and you still haven't spoken to her. You need to call and fix that and apologize, or whatever it is, right? Try your best by looking at all these things and making the effort, and everything won't be perfect. There are some things you can't fix, but if you're giving it your best shot, you can live with that. It's when you look back at something. I'm going to tell you, unfortunately, a cautionary tale, because a guy that worked with me named Tony, and he had a big argument with his brother at Thanksgiving. And I kept saying, if you called him to apologize, and he never called, he didn't try ever. A full year went by. And I said, you haven't spoken in a year. You haven't tried to reach out. Neither of you tried to apologize, tried to make it right. And after a year, and then one day he said to me, I'm going to fly back to my hometown in 2 weeks, and I'm going to get my dad to help me broker a meeting with him. And the week in between those 2 weeks, his brother was in a car accident and died. And he's, I know that's a horrible story, but it just made me think that you just said, when people are going to launch something big and they know it's going to engross and engulf their life, my answer is that's not an excuse for not still trying everything else. And by the way, communicating, telling people, look, I'm launching this startup. I know it's eating my lunch. I know I'm busy a lot. Here's why I'm doing it. Here's what it means to our future. I could use your support and exchange. I'll make sure that I make time for you guys, no matter how hard that is. People say it's an excuse. Well, I'm launching a startup. I'm too busy. I really don't have a weekend to spend with the kids. Find one. Okay. So do your best. That's really what it's all about.
Amen.
Stop expecting to be perfect and to ever have everything in perfect balance. That might last for 10 minutes and then something's going to crash and burn, and you need to go fix that right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Just being real with yourself and just reflecting, looking at your areas of life. So awesome. I know that you have been working on a TV show, right?
Yes.
You guys are getting into TV shows. Yeah. So tell us about that. I would like to just dig. Where's that at right now?
So we got two. One was just released, and the best place to see it is on entrepreneur.com, Entrepreneur Magazine streaming site. It's a show called Going Public, or you can go to our website, goingpublic.com. I'm both an executive producer and on the show. The show is like Shark Tank, except that the TV viewers get to invest in the companies, not the sharks. If you like the company you see on the show, we have a thing that called Click to Invest, and you can buy pre-IPO stock in the companies instead of Mark Cuban and Mr. Wonderful Investing. You get to.
Wow.
The other show, for which I'm an executive producer as well, and we just won our second Emmy, is a show called Success in the City, and it's a show addressing what success means to a whole new generation, right? Millennials, Gen Z, not to my generation. What does success mean to today's generation? Because it's a different definition than it was when I was growing up. And that's what we're exploring in that show. Wow. That one is streaming on Amazon. So those are the two shows that we're currently producing.
Awesome. Oh, I love that, man. I'm going to definitely check those out. Going Public sounds awesome. They both sound amazing, but Going Public, actually being able to invest into a company that you find extremely interesting, that is so cool. Jeff, man, thank you so much for being on the Brett Snodgrass podcast today. It's been amazing. I like to end every show with a little fire round. So these are just real quick questions for you. All right. Number one, best book recently read.
Recently read?
Yeah.
I read one of the books in the Tattooist of Auschwitz series. And it just, it hit me hard, right? Those are tough books, but it made me think a lot. And I'm glad I read it.
Awesome. Those are for my personal collection too. I always get every book everybody says, so thank you for that. All right, number two, a favorite person that you've worked with. Is there like yeah?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, but recently became good friends with and worked together on a lot of charity stuff with Pitbull. His actual name is Armando. But he is an example of how successful people should behave and bring humanity and humility to that position. So I'm going to say Mr. Worldwide.
Awesome. Sounds good. Favorite business that you've worked in?
Oh, that would be that first one, the kiosk company. Even though Priceline was a great and obviously successful run, I learned so much so fast in that first company that's probably my favorite.
Cool. All right, last one. What do you want the summary of your life to be about?
I think about that a lot. I'm glad you asked that because I would never want to be remembered by the number of dollars I made. I'd want to be remembered by the number of people whose lives I made better. So in the end, all these children that we're housing and feeding and educating, the best thing that could ever happen in my life, which doesn't have to include me in it, is one of those kids goes on to cure cancer, solve disease, make whatever, invent something amazing, become first female president of our country. If any of the kids we're helping anywhere in the world turn out to have an epic and amazing, impactful life, that would be the best. Even if I only had a small part of that by creating the opportunity, that'd be the best legacy I could ever leave.
Love that. Jeff Hoffman, you're a good man, good businessman, good, at everything. So thank you so much for being on the Brett Snodgrass podcast today. Appreciate you, buddy.
Thank you, Brett.
Thank you so much for checking out the Brett Snodgrass channel. If you like this video, please slam on that like button. And if you really like it, then subscribe to our channel here. And remember to leave us a comment below, and I'm going to try my hardest to reply to all the comments. Thank you guys so much. This is why I do what I do. Every single week, I come out with content that focuses on success, freedom, and living out your purpose. Thank you guys so much. See you next time.